Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Empathetic Change Management, How One Company is on Pace to Save Thousands of Hours Through AI Automation. I'm Quirk's editor, Joe Ridholm, and before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple of the ways you can participate in today's discussion. You can use the chat tab to interact with other attendees, and if you'd like to ask questions of the presenters, you can use the Q&A tab to submit questions during the session, and our speakers will answer them after the presentation. Our session is presented by Canvas. Enjoy the webinar.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be speaking with our partners, C-Space, on how they successfully and empathetically implemented an AI automation to save thousands of hours on manual coding of open-ended responses. My name is Jared Feldman. I'm the founder and CEO of Canvas. I'm super excited to introduce the amazing Celeste Balboni, who is the Product Innovation Specialist at C-Space and the captain leading the charge around the C-Space Canvas partnership. Thank you so much for joining today, Celeste.
Yes, thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me. Like you said, my name is Celeste Balboni, and I'm a Product Innovation Specialist here at C-Space. And I'm super excited to be here with you all today to talk a little bit more about our partnership with Canvas and how we've successfully rolled out a new platform across our entire business.
Awesome. Well, in this session today, everybody, we're going to talk about the innovative choice from C-Space to overhaul their research process, how they landed on Canvas and automation as a solution, but also the unique and caring approach that they took to ensure a successful adoption across their organization. And most importantly, what the business impact actually was that they've uncovered in just the first few months of rolling this out. So before we dig in too deep into the process and the ROI and what's been happening here, Celeste, I think it'd be really helpful for those that maybe haven't been introduced to C-Space formally yet, if you could give just a bit of background about who C-Space is.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks, Jared. So at C-Space, we call ourselves a customer agency, and we believe in providing customer-inspired growth. So while the scope of our work can vary from customer research to large-scale innovation practices, our clients' customers are always at the center of what we're doing. And we believe that customers should play an active role in key business decisions. In order to grow, companies must build their customers into the way that they work. And because we care about real customers and their voices, we tend to collect a lot of unstructured data, whether that be in the format of a video or open-ended question responses. This kind of data is super important and pivotal to the work that we do as a global company because we're collecting the actual voice of our clients' customers. However, it's difficult to deliver and leverage this type of data at speed, and so we have a huge need to operationalize.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, sounds like all of this open-ended text and unstructured data is important to the core value of C-Space and your clients. So if you were to kind of summarize the main thing that you're trying to solve and bringing on a new partner around open-ended text, what would it be?
Yeah, so we realized that we needed to find a way to more efficiently understand all of our qualitative data and open-ended analysis. Our traditional system of hand coding took too long and required a lot of manual labor. We wanted to understand what parts of the analysis process we could speed up so our consultants could spend less time manually coding data and more time uncovering deeper insights for our clients. So when we started to think about this process and what the most important features would look like to make this technology the most helpful and impactful for our clients, we came up with a handful of features. Great. And so as a small rollout team, these features were really a guiding principle for us in finding the right platform to fit our needs. The first and highest priority was easy uploading of data. We needed to find something that was easy to use because based on past experience, we knew that if there was anything difficult about the initial upload process, adoption would be really tough. And the second here that's most valuable was time savings through automation. Since our main goal or problem to solve for was efficiency gains, we knew we needed to rely on some level of automation to get us there. And then when we were first introduced to Canvas, and as we spent more time researching and getting to know the platform, we discovered a lot of other features that were added benefits, such as topic identification, data cuts by closed-ended questions, data visuals with easy export, new layers of insights unknown before, customizable dashboards, and statistical significance testing. So, Jared, could you give us a little bit more background on Canvas's approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're describing are a number of new ways to think about open-ended text. And just to give a little bit of context for those of you who haven't been introduced to Canvas, what we're very focused on is enabling empathy and ingesting, as much open-ended text as you have and structuring it, analyzing it, understanding and synthesizing, and putting forth really succinct, clear how people feel, what are they talking about, how do you summarize the common ideas and responses, and put it forth in a very simple, easy to digest format that's easily shareable and ultimately yields faster insights, faster time to value in a highly accurate way. And it needs to be, in order of magnitude more efficient and stronger than a manual approach in order to inspire, the type of rollout and change that's required to adopt, a new technology. And I think that's what we really want to drill into in this webinar, is that just having the correct features, picking a vendor that just checks the box on the capabilities is actually really just the start. It's kind of table stakes, and that rolling it out is much harder. I was blown away when I saw this stat that 73% of enterprises, they failed to get the actual business value that they're hoping to get from their digital transformation. Everyone who watches this has thought about it or has experience trying to roll out a new technology and ultimately it not really working. And generally, it's an enormous resource sink and time suck for everybody involved. And ultimately, there's this opportunity cost of, everything you could have accomplished had you not done that. And generally, what we found from the study and just in our experience working with partners is that failure to see value ultimately comes down to two things. Basically, the users don't adopt and use the tool, and or there's not really a simple way to quantify clearly the ROI. And so given this is true for anyone who has tried to roll out something new at their business, Celeste, you are super experienced in rolling out new technologies, and would love if you could just talk a little bit about the traditional methods that you've seen and maybe why they fail to provide value in your experience.
Yes, absolutely. So we've had a lot of experience in rolling out other tech platforms and have learned a lot. And so here we identified a handful of factors that ultimately have hindered our adoption efforts. In our Canvas use case, we understood as a company that this technology and this platform was way too important to us to not have the rollout be successful. So we took a very intentional and methodical approach to our plan. But during that time, we also thought about what we had done in the past that might have contributed to our lack of adoption in previous platforms. So for today, we're going to call this the traditional method. And in this method, there are 5 key factors that typically contribute to an unsuccessful adoption, and again, based on our experience. The first one being that the platform and the technology is forced onto our teams.
Right.
So when the tech is forced without, leadership or peer buy-in, our users are, expected and asked to become experts in the platform from the very beginning, and it can feel like a burden rather than a help to them. The second, having unclear goals. If the goals aren't clearly stated or effectively communicated from the start, those that were asking to learn a new platform and change their day-to-day processes don't understand what the benefit is to them. They don't understand how to use it and in what ways.
Right.
The third, not allowing questioning or any feedback. If we don't leave space for this natural skepticism that can occur when we're encouraging a new platform or a new technology, it can really hinder and close off communication.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're building in confidence for this new platform. Fourth, if there's a lack of control of the entire process, meaning if there's no clear or structured plan from start to finish, which includes trainings, usage goals, and other KPIs, it's difficult to know what success should look like. And then lastly, if the technology is too complex, it can be very difficult to train users and instill confidence in order for them to be able to leverage and use in their day-to-day.
Knowing that the traditional method typically doesn't work, C-Space effectively created a new way, which was so remarkable to be a part of, that we're now terming the empathy method to roll out a new technology at an organization. And obviously, empathy is a core value of both C-Space and Canvas. So obviously, this resonates deeply. But what we understood to be true is that because you, as you termed Canvas being a must-have for your organization, that there was a couple of really key factors that drove the adoption, and to consider a couple of things that were different, to approach this more empathetically, as we talked about, and really considering your colleagues and how you can best support them and ultimately best support your clients, which at the end of the day is most key. So in terms of the empathy method and defining this, Celeste, would love if you could overview what this is.
Definitely. Yeah. And exactly as you said, we really wanted to create and build empathy with our colleagues and our end users and understand what that process might look like for them. And so with that being said, we came up with 4 key factors that would play a role in our successful launch and rollout of Canvas across our entire company. So the first being control the rollout. We needed to make sure that we had a specific, very clear plan from start to finish. Next, we needed to make sure that we allow for skepticism.
Right.
We knew our teams would naturally have questions and doubts and understood that to be part of the process. But we needed to be confident in the tech and the benefits that it will eventually bring to our teams. Third, and I think most importantly here, we wanted to make sure that we were eliminating any and all barriers. We wanted to make it as accessible as possible to everyone within the business. And by doing so, and by giving everyone access to the platform, we were able to open up usage and eliminate any kind of barriers to entry. And lastly, have patience. With such a large scale initiative, we knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, but we knew that we needed to trust the pieces that we'd already put in place and continue with the process as defined. So let's dive into these a little bit more tactfully.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step that we talked about and that you mentioned was this control the rollout. And I know that there's a few key items as part of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the first one being we created this pilot structure in which we identified a group of pilot or test users across multiple teams at C-Space who we knew had an immediate need for something like Canvas. We knew that they were going to be using it down the road and wanted their thoughts and feedback from the start. We also wanted these participants to be able to offer up their advocacy of the tool to their peers and colleagues.
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
We also, wanted this to be a cross-functional process, and that included buy-in from our COO. We had input from our chief people officer, and also, bringing in our learning and development team to really flesh out this process. And so, as a group, we discussed what a successful rollout plan looks like and defined certain success criteria, which mainly revolved around usage metrics, which brings us to this next component here, that we set very specific expectations around timing and usage.
Right.
So we started by scheduling and communicating that these training sessions would be mandatory for everyone, every consultant at C-Space. And once these teams had been trained, they were then required to start using the platform immediately within a week of their training session. And then we also opened up a lot of different lines of communication to encourage these users to give us feedback on their experience and ask us questions about what they were seeing and doing in the platform. And since we knew from the start that we wanted to track usage, we outlined a handful of KPIs to keep a pulse on. It was really important to us that our users aren't simply checking a box and using the platform once, but rather fully incorporating Canvas into their daily work. We wanted to be able to understand who's using it repeatedly and in what capacity as we continue to train and roll this out. So it's a very recurring process.
Right. So it's investing in them, making them aware of all the capabilities, giving them that sort of expectation that they should be using it quickly and regularly.
Exactly.
And then, it's tracking, knowing going into it, what success would look like from a KPI standpoint. Yeah,
You got it.
it's really, really key. And it leads to what happens in the second step that you talked about, which you mentioned allowing for skepticism, which is a very kind of non-obvious trait of a rollout plan. Whereas typically you might say, this is what we're doing, and you can like it or leave. And instead, fostering and allowing for this open dialogue, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of the foil to that, forcing it onto the team and what we've seen in our traditional rollout, experiences. So we knew ahead of time we wanted to kind of prepare for this skepticism that would occur. We know our audience very well. We know these consultants, and based on our past experience, we know they're going to ask us questions. And so we wanted to understand how they might feel about this change and about, being asked to be a part of this rollout, and how their day-to-day life and work at CSpace might differ. And so kind of along with that, we also knew that we needed to allow for questioning. This natural doubt and curiosity is a very natural part of the process, again, especially when rolling out on such a large scale, and encouraging the use across the whole business. So in this setting, it's common to think and kind of wonder, what's in it for me? What's in it? Why are we doing this? And so because of that, we were really prepared for any of these questions to come up, and created an internal resource guide, a frequently asked questions guide, to ensure everyone was on the same page. And again, to kind of create and further instill that confidence in Canvas that it's the right tool for us.
Right. And through that open dialogue, folks become empowered, right? They feel like they can question and poke holes and kind of see for themselves. And then all of a sudden, given the right resourcing and that framework, they feel empowered to leverage it on their own and discover their own use cases, right?
Exactly. We're building them into the process. We're not leaving them behind.
Yeah, that's empathy. Now it's a good segue to your third point that you talked about, which was eliminating barriers, and you frame this as really, really crucial. Obviously, eliminating barriers at a high level is super key to any rollout, but there's a couple of really crucial things that I know that you and the team are very intentional about as you thought about this rollout. Would you mind expounding there?
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is something that we had to kind of think about a lot differently this time around, and try something new. Within this kind of keep our options open section, we chose very, specifically to not provide any real or specific use cases for the platform. Instead, we framed it as, this is how we're working from now on, because we knew that if we were to limit the platform to very specific use cases, those use cases would then in turn become reasons for why teams couldn't use Canvas, if their data set wasn't exactly as stated in the use case. So we really wanted to lower that barrier and, say, use it for everything. And so with that, and, as we encourage that usage and recurring usage, we knew that people would start to naturally uncover use cases on their own. So what kinds of data sets they're seeing that are working better in the platform versus others, and ways that they can further incorporate Canvas into their analyses processes. And so when working toward adoption, testing and encouraging our teams to really use it and really learn it for themselves is key for a better understanding across the board.
Yeah, it's such an important point you're making, that effectively the analogy in my head is like, if Canvas is a new car, you're
Hmm.
explaining to them how it works, you're forcing them to go through, where the brake is, how the,
Yep.
how the windows roll down. You have to make sure you put on your seatbelt. Here's how you drive, but then go wherever you're inspired to, and just
Exactly.
see where the road takes you, and you end up falling in love with the car and using it more if it ends up taking you where you want to go.
Absolutely.
Allowing for that is also non-obvious, to not prescribe the use cases, not say you have to go here, and then being like, well, I don't really need to go there, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
it's a reason to not use the car.
Exactly.
Really, really thoughtful. And I think too, allowing for that space for folks to figure it out on their own requires what is the fourth and final step of the empathy method here, is having patience. And this, at least for me, is kind of the toughest step to conceptualize in my head, where if this is about efficiency, then like, let's roll this out as efficiently and as
Hmm.
quickly as possible. But as cliche as it sounds, all good things take time. And I know it's important to not lose track of the larger goal and adoption that we want to see, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, we learned that it's critical to have patience, especially when dealing with such a large rollout. And I think another important point here is that it's a continuous effort. It doesn't stop at a certain point. We are going to keep, coming across different ways and, new things that we have to keep in mind and incorporate into our adoption cycle and process.
Right.
And so we knew that instead of identifying, experts internally right off the bat, we really wanted to wait and encourage natural hand raisers, as we're saying here, because we found in the past that if we, force it or assign people to be, spokespeople, so to speak, for these different tools and platforms, they don't always have a need for it, or it makes the tool and the platform feel like a burden and
Right.
more work to them rather than a solution. And so though our communication around Canvas is that it's a requirement, we don't specify again in which way or in which use cases. So
Mm.
we can allow our users to come to us and tell us, what they learned and discovered in the platform on their own based on their own analysis. And so, you know, we're kind of waiting for those natural hand raisers to come up. We've had a handful reach out already,
Right.
but it's been great to kind of see people push the limits and the boundaries of what they can do so far
Right.
based on their initial training. And that kind of leads to the next point here, in that, as these folks continue to raise their hand and show natural curiosity and learning more, we want to be able to provide continuous education opportunities. So whether that be, an advanced Canvas training, a 2.0, so to speak,
Right.
that's really important to us to keep having those opportunities available to our consultants. And then even further, since this is such now, a key part of our business, we need to make sure that it's ingrained and incorporated into our new employee onboarding experience. So from when a new person starts at C-Space, we want to make sure they know everything there is to know about Canvas, and so that it's equal across the board from, new joiner to a veteran consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's parity, right? Like that a new person is getting just the same advantage as, the folks that were here when we rolled it out. And I think it's like a really, really key thing to think about, that, onboarding a new tool feels like it's a finite thing, but really it's an ongoing investment that you have to make that then pays dividends when you
Mhm.
have patience and you follow this method. But again, a little bit non-obvious, and it's exciting that it's incorporated in this method that you've created.
For sure. Yeah.
Now, if we were to sort of bring this back to the problem you were trying to solve, as you stated, you've got all of these open ends. You need to
Mhm.
operationalize them to really understand the voice of the customer. It's really key for your business and for your clients. And we know that 73% of rollouts of these digital transformation efforts generally don't succeed. And
Mhm.
so you've constructed and operationalized this empathy method, where you're controlling the rollout, you're allowing for skepticism, you're eliminating the barriers, and you're having patience. You're
Mm-hmm.
basically allowing the hand raisers and the subject matter experts to emerge, and you're continuously investing in their education over time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this matters because it matters to the bottom line. And we talked about why things fail generally is because users don't adopt, and it's really hard to quantify the ROI. So really excited to kind of dig into, let's check in how it's going. This is a very cool, special moment and very rarely shared in the industry of how a company like C-Space that is on the bleeding edge and seen as a true thought leader is basically being transparent as to how they've devised this plan to onboard successfully, and then also be transparent about the KPIs, which we talked about early, being intentional about. So, it's been a little over 4 months since the partnership began between C-Space and Canvas. And what you're looking at is the growth curve of the C-Space users in Canvas and the number of projects analyzed in Canvas. And as you can see, the adoption is growing really, really nicely. As of the end of April, C-Space had 146 users in the platform compared to just 17 in January, 61 total projects uploaded compared to 9 in January, and 89 about year to date. And I know that one of the goals for C-Space wasn't only to have users just sign up, right, but to change the behavior, right, to have them use in an ongoing way, right, Celeste?
Yeah, exactly. It's a key part of our, empathy method in driving and defining our success criteria in the form of expectation setting was huge. And so one of those expectations was repeat and recurrent users. And we're pleased and happy to report, that 55% of our users have logged in and used the platform multiple times since creating their account. So I think, we're starting to see really great adoption and really great usage thus far. But again, we know that at this point in time, not everyone has uploaded or analyzed a project yet. So there's still room for improvement. There's still, we can still raise that bar a little bit more next month. But we're really excited to see the momentum kick up.
Yeah, absolutely. And pickup it has, and it's like 131 users created just in the last 60 days alone. And I know a lot of that came from, the trainings that you've set up and that you've asked folks to participate in, that as soon as they get exposed to the capabilities and they're given the rules of the road, so to speak, and the keys to the car, that they're then creating their accounts very quickly and getting going. But it really is, it's a non-obvious thing that is important, that's driving a lot of this behavior.
Absolutely. Right. And again, so that big uptick in April was a result of those trainings that we had in that month and required users to log in and create their account right after their training. So, it was great to kind of see that here solidified, that we checked the box on that in terms of making sure that everyone was following instructions and, really coming back to, again, our success criteria.
Absolutely. Now, the other sort of key thing to think about, and we talked about this as to why traditional methods generally aren't successful, is like the clear, quantifiable ROI for the business. Like, why does it make sense to invest this much energy and intentionality into rolling something like this out? And AI generally is designed in part to really automate these kind of established business practices that are disproportionately important. We talked about the value of all of this data, but how does this actually translate to the bottom line, right? How do we think about efficiency in that regard? And so it was really cool to pinpoint the actual benefits around this rollout, the empathy method approach, that in the last 4 months, by automating a part of the process, C-Space has saved 267 hours, thousands of dollars of manual sort of human capital efficiency gains. And it's yielded a near 30% margin improvement on the same projects that were being handled entirely manually previously. And it's a new superpower, basically, to be able to accomplish the insights and projects more efficiently with the same degree of intelligence. And the time saved and the money saved and this sort of yield will only improve over time, because the technology itself, like a principle of it, is that the more data it looks at, the more it understands how you interact with it, the smarter it becomes. And so over time, the margin improvement and the hours saved per project will continue to increase and hopefully continue to provide great benefits to the organization.
Definitely. And on top of that, we hope that our humans themselves will improve. So as we continue to use Canvas across the business and in the ways that we work, we'll hopefully be faster at uploading our data and analyzing our data, since our consultants will get more comfortable and confident in how to generate the most valuable insights and, generate those different, key findings and learnings from the platform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's a really remarkable case study in an inventive new process to really see meaningful gains in adopting a new technology. And I just think it's so exciting. And just to kind of summarize what we talked about in one place, and really kind of to synthesize this in a slide that can be shared and easily digested, in rolling out this new technology using this empathy method, really focusing on controlling the rollout, allowing for skepticism, not fighting it, really eliminating barriers systematically, and just having patience. These are the things that are, really, really key. So with that, Celeste, I really just want to thank you so much for your participation and your incredible sharing the incredible empathy method that you and C-Space came up with. And for being so open about sharing this plan with the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. And it's been, a really great partnership. And we're very excited again about the momentum and all the great things that we're seeing thus far. So, happy to share our story, and thanks for partnering with us on this.
Oh, our pleasure. Well, with that, we would love to open it up for questions. And thank you, everybody, for your attention.
I think to start off with, can you talk about, which step on the empathy method would you say was the most important and why?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think, all the steps are really, important and pivotal to our process here. But I think personally, the eliminate the barriers section, I think was most important on my end, just because from my experience, knowing that if we had any kind of barriers or anything that, seemed too difficult or, hard to get at in the platform, whether that be in terms of how the actual technology worked or, in just providing access, we were able to provide accounts to every single consultant. So the ability for us to be able to open up access freely to anybody in the company was huge. And I think, from my end, that was a really important part of the process.
I guess sort of following on from that, can you talk about what were some of the most difficult steps in the empathy method?
Yeah. So I think, it's again, as I mentioned at the end there, I think it's, a continuous process, so to speak. I think one of the things is the initial kind of getting people to sign into their account and try it out for the first time, I think is one of the harder or more difficult parts. We can mandate a training and give everyone the account, but then it's on them, to really go in there and upload their data and try it out for themselves. So while we did have a really great conversion rate, we still have, stragglers, that's kind of, again, part of the process. So, being able to follow up with them directly and, check in with them and see what's happening and if we can help in any way, has helped us kind of bridge that gap a little bit. But I think that will always be something that we have to keep an eye on.
Right. I think when you were planning this, did you have a timeline for, like, if this doesn't work, what do we do? Was there any kind of a backup plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we had really, an alternative. I think, as I spoke to at the beginning, this platform and this partnership was really important to us. And so we needed to make sure that it was successful. And I think all the steps that we took from, that initial meeting of, getting the buy-in from, our COO and our CPO and other, key internal stakeholders, we really needed to set out, what success looked like and how we saw ourselves, months and even weeks down the line. So, I think we didn't really have an alternative. And I think kind of putting that pressure on ourselves helped get us to where we are today.
Absolutely. And if I could just add, on the vendor side, it became very obvious quickly how much intentionality there was with C-Space and how they approached this with such empathy, and sort of there was a number of non-obvious things that they did that were really striking and a bit counterintuitive. Like the idea that you would roll out a technology and not tell people what to do with it, but just give them the guidelines and the rules of the road, ended up creating a number of new use cases that we weren't even really expecting. And those sorts of guardrails that they put in place with the empathy method was really successful, and it sort of ensured that there wasn't really a need for an alternative. There wasn't a scenario where this wouldn't work because of all of the intention they put behind the process.
Oh, great question here. You talk about some of the ways you were able to ensure that the data was used properly once it was left in the hands of the researchers?
Yeah, so the data meaning their own analysis and their own uploading?
I think so.
Yeah. So I think, we really relied on, those mandatory training sessions, and they were, we had 4 different sessions that occurred across the month of April. And, it was a full demo of the platform from start to finish, of how to upload and, then use the platform to generate, the different, insights and analysis you can do in the platform. So I think, we were really keen on getting everyone to attend those trainings. And then on top of that, we also created a unique C-Space support email alias. So, if anyone had any kind of, technical issues or questions about how to use the platform, we really encourage people to reach out to that specific distro so that we were streamlining and, creating a specific and very clear channel of where to go if and when you had any kind of questions or issues. So, I think, again, the kind of the 2 parts of the training, the resources of, we had some internal kind of collateral of, documentation and frequently asked questions, that kind of thing. And then also encouraging people to reach out with specific technical questions and, any kind of issues was really important to make sure they understood that there was, protection and support across the entire process.
Right. 2 kind of related questions here. I think asking about what was the search process like before landing on Canvas, and then also what aspects of Canvas stood out from the competitors?
Yeah, so I think we had tried a lot of different things in pockets, and I think, thinking back to what we were talking about as the traditional method, we didn't really have a very clear approach when we were trying out other platforms, and I think, that might have led to some of the kind of fallout or the reasons to why it didn't really take off as successfully. But I think part of that is also because the platforms themselves weren't as sophisticated and what we really needed with Canvas. So I think it was kind of twofold in that regard. I think before we had really tried to identify specific, key experts and users in the platforms and the ones we tried before. And, if it wasn't exactly what we were looking for, if it wasn't exactly, it didn't exactly fit the bill, then it was hard to, take and capitalize on that rollout. And so I think, again, that kind of led to, the lack of momentum and the lack of adoption. And then Canvas it kind of fell into my lap almost. I had met them at a conference a couple of years back, kept them in the back of my mind. And then as we're looking for a new solution, reached back out and tried to get the ball rolling again. And, kind of as you were speaking to earlier in terms of our feature requirements, I think, the top 2 really being, easy to use and, saving some time with automation. And those were very clear with Canvas from the start. So, I think it took a little bit of trial and error to find that right fit for us. But, again, Canvas has really checked a lot of boxes in terms of those features and capabilities.
Sure. Got about 2 minutes left here. So Jared, I wanted to toss one over to you. Is there anything that you and your team took away from this process to implement at Canvas?
Well, a few things. I mean, the way in which that C-Space treated us were as true partners. We felt like we could collaborate. We had visibility into what their process was. We sort of co-developed the curriculum and the initial education and soon the ongoing education process. And effectively, the more information we had, the more we could help ensure that the process would be successful. I think, too, that the multi-tier support approach, which Celeste spoke to briefly, where, in-app you can chat us in real time, but we've also set up a dedicated C-Space alias for them to use. They have certainly their dedicated account manager and trainers, and it requires multiple touches and multiple levels of support. And you really just need to prepare for that to make sure that you are properly and systematically training the users and getting them on that great adoption curve and making it just really cut and dry obvious to the business stakeholders how much ROI this really can get you.
Sure. Well, I think that's about all we have time for today. I want to just thank Canvas and C-Space, and most importantly, everybody out there for joining us here today. We really appreciate it. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.